Let me ask you something that no one else dares to. How long have you been getting ready to start? Be honest. How many plans, outlines, mind maps, books, YouTube videos, online courses, productivity tools, and journal entries have you accumulated? All in the name of preparation. And yet, the thing you say you want, the project, the business, the transformation, is still sitting untouched, like an unopened gift you keep admiring, but never dare to unwrap. You probably tell yourself you're being responsible, that you're just not ready yet, that you're gathering knowledge, waiting for the right time, or making sure you'll do it properly. But here's the truth no one tells you. That voice in your head, the one convincing you to wait, isn't being careful. It's being protective, and not in a good way. It's your brain running an ancient script, hardwired to keep you safe, not successful. And in the modern world, that safety mechanism has become your invisible prison. You see, the real problem is not that you don't know what to do. You already know. Deep down, you've known for months, maybe years. You know what needs to be done, but you keep waiting to feel like doing it, to feel confident, motivated, clear, to feel ready. And that's where your entire life is getting hijacked, because that feeling, it's never coming. Mel Robbins, someone who dragged herself out of depression and financial collapse using one brutally simple insight, puts it plainly: you are never going to feel like it. You are never going to wake up one day suddenly filled with unstoppable motivation and clarity. That is a fairy tale. That is the lie that's keeping you stuck. Because here's how the brain works. Every time you feel an impulse to change, to move, to start, you get about 5 seconds before your mind kills it. Literally. Within that window, your brain will flood you with fear, hesitation, rationalizations. What if I fail? Maybe tomorrow. Let me just check one more thing first. Sound familiar? It's not laziness. It's not lack of willpower. It's neuroscience. And the cost of not knowing this? Years of your life lost in the space between knowing and doing. A slow death by hesitation. So I'm not here to give you more inspiration. You don't need more reasons. You already have them. I'm here to tell you the truth. If you don't act in the first 5 seconds after the impulse hits, you won't act at all. That's how fast your brain builds the cage. That's how fast your dream dies. And that's where this conversation begins. Not with comfort, but with truth. Unfiltered, unromantic, and non-negotiable. You're not stuck because you're not ready. You're stuck because you're waiting to feel ready. And that day, it's never coming. Let's go deeper. Because the reason you're stuck runs much deeper than procrastination or lack of willpower. It's biological. Your own brain, the thing you rely on for logic, vision, intelligence, is, ironically, the main force keeping you paralyzed. And if you don't understand how, you'll keep mistaking self-sabotage for being cautious. Here's the brutal truth. Your brain does not give a damn about your dreams. It doesn't care about your ambitions, your purpose, your goals, or the legacy you want to leave behind. It has one job, refined over millions of years: keep you alive, not thriving, not fulfilled, just alive. And to do that, it is obsessed with one thing: avoiding risk. Every time you think about starting something that feels uncertain, difficult, or different, whether it's launching a business, moving to another city, ending a toxic relationship, or simply making a phone call you've been avoiding, your brain immediately categorizes it as a threat. Not because it is dangerous, but because it is unknown. And to your survival-oriented brain, unfamiliar, unsafe. That's why your body tenses up. That's why your stomach twists. That's why you feel that sudden, invisible weight pressing down on your chest every time you think about taking action. It's not reality. It's not intuition. It's fear. and it's being manufactured by your own nervous system in real time. This is not a bug. It's a feature. It's the same mechanism that kept your ancestors from walking into the dark cave, eating the strange berry, or confronting the predator alone. But now, that same ancient mechanism is getting triggered when you try to post your first video, speak up in a meeting, or send your manuscript to a publisher. Your brain still thinks you might die from social rejection or failure. It doesn't realize you're not in the jungle anymore. You're in your apartment, with Wi-Fi, trying to grow. And here's where it gets worse. The smarter you are, the more articulate, analytical, and self-aware, the better your brain is at manufacturing reasonable excuses that sound wise. You don't call it fear. You call it timing. You call it being strategic. You say things like, "I'm just waiting for the right moment. I need to finish this one thing first. I'll start after the holidays. I just need a little more research." That's fear in a suit and tie. It wears the costume of logic. But underneath, it's the same terrified primitive instinct screaming, "Don't move, don't risk, stay where it's safe." And every time you listen to it, you reinforce the neural loop that says, hesitation as protection, planning as progress, inaction as safety. But here's the paradox. In today's world, your comfort zone is not your safe zone, it's your death zone. Not a quick death, a slow one. The kind that eats your confidence, numbs your spirit, and turns years into regrets. And unless you interrupt this mechanism, unless you learn how to override this internal alarm system, you'll never move. You'll keep building castles in your mind and graves under your potential. So now the question is, how do you interrupt this cycle? How do you override a brain that was built to betray your growth? The answer is shockingly simple. In fact, it only takes 5 seconds, and that's exactly what we'll explore next. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Here's a truth that will disturb you, and it should. You are waiting for something that is never going to happen. You think that one day you'll wake up and suddenly feel like it. You'll feel energized, confident, certain, like all the stars will align, and you'll finally start writing the book, building the brand, fixing the relationship, quitting the job. But here's what no one ever told you. That feeling, the one you're waiting for, it's a lie. You won't feel ready. Not now, not later, not ever. We've been sold a fantasy. That motivation is this magical, spontaneous force that shows up and carries us across the finish line, that one day we'll just feel different, and that moment will be so powerful, we'll never look back. Bullshit. As Mel Robbins said, you are never going to feel like it. Motivation is not a prerequisite to action. It's a result of action. You don't feel motivated and then act. You act, and then, and only then, the motivation follows. This isn't theory. This is biology. Your brain is a survival machine, not a success engine. When you think about doing something difficult or uncertain, your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fear, lights up. The job of the amygdala is to keep you away from pain, uncertainty, and discomfort. So it floods your system with hesitation, doubt, and 100 reasons to wait. You call this thinking. It's not thinking. It's fear pretending to be logic. This is why people spend decades preparing but never starting. This is why people with PhDs, coaches, mentors, full plans, and endless resources stay stuck for years, because they're still waiting for a feeling that will never arrive. They're addicted to the illusion that readiness comes before action. Let me break it to you. Readiness is a myth. Confidence is a myth. Clarity is a myth. These are all things you earn on the journey, not things you begin with. Think about it. Did you feel ready the first time you had a tough conversation, made a leap of faith, started something meaningful? No, you were terrified, but you did it anyway. And then the courage came, then the pride came, then the energy to keep going appeared. That's how the system works. The longer you wait to feel ready, the more you train your brain to believe that action requires emotion, that you have to want to do something before you do it. And every time you obey that lie, it gets stronger. Every day you hesitate, the hesitation becomes more familiar, more natural, more comfortable. Until one day, you look back at a life full of almosts, maybes, and someday. So what do the people who break through do differently? They act without permission from their feelings. They don't wait to want to move. They move, despite not wanting to. And in doing so, they retrain their brain to stop asking for comfort before taking action. This is the turning point. This is where the game changes, when you realize that you don't need to feel like it. You don't need permission from your mind. You don't need to be motivated, inspired, or confident. You need to act. Now, before the hesitation takes hold. And there is a tool, a deceptively simple, science-backed tool, that gives you the power to do just that. You'll learn it in the next part, and once you do, you'll never see the space between intention and action the same way again. Now that you understand why you're stuck, not because you're lazy, but because your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do, it's time to break the cycle. And the tool you're about to learn is so simple, it will sound ridiculous at first. You might even roll your eyes. But once you understand what it does, neurologically and behaviorally, you'll see why it's one of the most powerful psychological mechanisms ever discovered by accident. It's called the 5-second rule. And here's how it works. The moment you have an instinct, a genuine urge to act on something meaningful, aligned with your goals, your growth, your truth, you count. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And you move, physically, immediately, before your brain has time to kill it. You don't wait, you don't negotiate, you don't debate, you don't rationalize, you act. That's it. This 5-second window is everything. Because if you don't move within it, the brain's survival system activates. It starts doing what it always does, launching mental narratives, resistance, excuses, fears, hesitations, and once those stories begin, you're done. You're back in the cage. So why does counting backward, something that sounds like a silly trick, actually work? Because it interrupts the default neural pathway of overthinking and activates a different part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. This is the area responsible for decision-making, planning, and action. By counting down, not up, you create a pattern interrupt. You override the fear center, amygdala, and engage the executive center. Your attention shifts, your physiology changes, and most importantly, your body moves. Mel Robbins didn't invent this rule in a lab. She discovered it in crisis, depressed, broke, drinking too much, hitting snooze every morning while her life fell apart. She saw a rocket launch on TV and said, "Tomorrow, I'm launching myself out of bed like that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And she did. That one moment sparked a complete transformation, financially, emotionally, professionally. Since then, this rule has been tested by thousands. People used it to stop drinking, to leave abusive relationships, to quit toxic jobs, to speak up in meetings, to finally take the first terrifying step toward who they were meant to be. And it works because it cuts through the noise. It doesn't require motivation, confidence, or readiness. It just requires 5 seconds of courage and the willingness to move before your brain has time to stop you. Here's the deeper truth. The hardest part is never the task itself. It's starting, opening the laptop, saying the first words, stepping outside, making the call. That micro moment of hesitation is where your life is decided, again and again, every single day. And when you win that moment, when you move before your fear can speak, you start to build something far more powerful than discipline. You build trust in yourself. You begin to prove, in real time, that you can act despite fear, that you can take the wheel from your instincts, that you are not at the mercy of your emotions. That's how you rebuild confidence. That's how momentum is born. Not from motivation, but from motion. And once you realize that, you understand something most people never do. Change doesn't happen in a year. It happens in 5 seconds. But now you might be asking, what happens after you move? What if it still feels hard? What if discomfort kicks in and you want to run back? That's the next battle. And in the next part, we'll explore the modern prison that makes sure most people never leave that cage, even after they start. It's called the comfort zone, and it's killing you slowly. Let's talk about the place you keep running back to, the one that feels safe, familiar, controllable. The place where nothing threatens you, but also nothing changes. It's your comfort zone. But here's the part no one tells you. That comfort. It comes at a price. And you're paying for it with your life. You weren't born stuck. You trained yourself to be. Every time you hesitated and chose safety over movement, you laid a brick. Every time you said, not today, maybe later, or what if it doesn't work, you laid another. And now you live inside a structure built entirely from your own fear. And it doesn't look like a prison. That's the genius of it. It looks like responsibility, like control, like being realistic. You decorate it with good intentions, a job that's not so bad, a routine that feels comfortable, a plan that keeps getting pushed to next month. But behind the calm is a quiet kind of despair, the kind that whispers, I know I was meant for more than this. Here's the dark truth. Your comfort zone is not neutral. It is not a passive space where nothing happens. It is an active force of decay. Every day you stay there, you shrink. Your confidence erodes. Your self-trust dissolves. Your dreams die, not in explosions, but in slow, forgettable silence. The longer you stay comfortable, the more your identity locks around the version of you who doesn't move. You start believing you're someone who just isn't the kind of person who, finish the sentence, takes risks, starts businesses, puts themselves out there, changes careers, tells the truth, lives fully. But none of that is true. It's just repetition. You've simply practiced comfort more than you've practiced courage. Because here's what happens when you step out of that zone. Discomfort. And let's be honest, most people treat discomfort like a threat. But discomfort isn't a warning. It's a signal. Growth never feels like growth while it's happening. It feels like fear, resistance, pain, uncertainty. It feels wrong because it's unfamiliar. But unfamiliar is not unsafe. It's just unused territory. Your comfort zone might be keeping you safe from failure, rejection, judgment. But it's also keeping you safe from success, meaning, and the version of yourself you haven't even met yet. It's a cocoon that was never meant to become a coffin. And here's the paradox. The more you leave the comfort zone, the larger it gets. What once felt terrifying becomes normal. What used to drain you begins to excite you. And what you once feared, you now own. Because when you build evidence that you can survive discomfort, your entire identity shifts. You stop asking, can I do this? And you start asking, what else am I capable of? But how do you start expanding that zone without overwhelming yourself? What if the leap feels too big? What if you freeze every time you try? Then you start small, micro, atomic. You don't need to break down the entire wall today. You just need to crack it. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. Because if the comfort zone is the prison, then micro movements are the escape plan. And in the next part, we'll dissect the psychology of momentum and how one small act can change everything. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. By now, you understand the stakes. You know your brain is wired to protect, not progress. You know motivation is unreliable. You know your comfort zone is more like a padded cell disguised as safety. But knowledge isn't enough. What matters now is movement, and not massive, dramatic movement. That's another myth that keeps people frozen, thinking they need to overhaul their entire life in one perfect leap. Forget the leap. What you need is a step, a microscopic, seemingly insignificant step. Because that's where momentum is born, not in revolution, but in motion, in the next action, not the best one, not the perfect one, just the next. This is where most people get it wrong. They confuse progress with perfection. They think they have to feel ready to write the whole book, launch the entire brand, run the marathon. And because that feels impossible, they do nothing. But here's what the people who actually do the thing understand. Tiny actions compound. Motion creates emotion. Energy follows execution. You don't need to write the book today. You need to open the document. You don't need to go to the gym and crush a full workout. You need to put on your shoes. You don't need to have the whole business plan. You need to send one email. That's it. That's the game. Because here's what happens when you start. You generate evidence. Evidence that you are not powerless, that you can act, that you do have control. And that evidence, even if it comes from a 30-second action, starts to dismantle the story your brain has been clinging to for years. That you're not ready, not good enough, not built for this. Mel Robbins calls this activation energy. The idea that movement itself is the fuel. It's not just symbolic. There's real neuroscience behind it. When you move your body, physically, you engage the prefrontal cortex, shifting focus away from the emotional centers that generate fear and hesitation. In other words, motion breaks the cycle of overthinking. This is why the 5-second rule works. It's not about getting the whole job done. It's about beating the window where your brain will kill the impulse. Once you take that first step, no matter how small, momentum takes over. And resistance? It starts to dissolve. The biggest myth in personal growth is that you need to feel better before you start. But the truth is, you start to feel better. Action first, emotion follows. And you want to know the craziest part? That tiny moment, the one where you moved instead of waiting, becomes a victory. One that your brain remembers. You reinforce the identity of someone who moves, someone who acts, someone who doesn't wait to feel like it. That shift in identity is how transformation begins. One micro win at a time. But there's something else even deeper and more powerful that happens when you build momentum. You begin to reclaim your agency. You stop seeing yourself as a passive victim of hesitation and start becoming the kind of person who decides, who moves, who initiates. And from that place, everything becomes possible. So let's take this even further, because it's not just about tasks. This isn't just for your to-do list. At some point, this stops being about productivity. This stops being about routines or getting things done. This becomes about who you are. Because the truth is, every time you hesitate, every time you surrender to fear, every time you wait for motivation, you are making a decision. And those decisions? They shape your identity more than you realize. You think you're stuck because you haven't made the big decisions yet. To leave the job, start the business, end the relationship, begin the chapter. But that's not true. You're stuck because of the small decisions you make every single day. The ones that seem insignificant. The ones where you could have moved but didn't. The decision to snooze, to scroll, to delay, to wait. That version of you, the one you dream about becoming, they're not built through fantasy. They're built through action. Through one 5-second moment at a time. One decision to move instead of freeze. One decision to lean in instead of back away. One decision to interrupt the story your fear keeps replaying in your head. That is the power of this rule. It's not just about doing, it's about becoming. Every time you count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and move, you're not just taking action. You're voting for a new identity. You're showing your brain, I don't need to feel like it. I decide what happens next. And that, right there, is freedom. The kind of freedom most people never experience because they've spent their lives outsourcing their future to their feelings. But you don't have to. You can reclaim control, not all at once, but in micro moments of defiance, in seconds of courage, in tiny, irreversible decisions that say, I will not live in hesitation anymore. And here's what you must remember. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not unmotivated. You've just been waiting for a feeling that was never designed to come. Now you know better. So here's your challenge. Comment below with the one thing you've been putting off. The one move you know you need to make. Not someday, not next week. Now. Write it down. Declare it. Own it. Because once it's real, once it's out of your head, you've already begun. And don't stop here. If this hit you, if it exposed something in you, keep watching. The next video is a part of the process. You've made it this far. Don't let the momentum die now. I'll see you there.